It's now afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. Just gonna put a little PSA out there. Schedule may be shifting. Gonna try to continue to keep with what we have, but unforeseen circumstances have possibly necessitated the need for change. I think the first, if there is going to be any, is going to be possibly Searching moving, or removed entirely from the release slate. But we'll see. But what we are here to talk about today is the continued adventures of Jess and her friends in National Treasure: Edge of History, which, if you listened to last week's episode, you know, basically called everything that's going to happen over the course of this episode, because the show is incredibly predictable, not really doing anything too new. It's kind of easy to figure out what's going on if you've watched anything ever over the last 20 years or so, or probably even longer than that. I'm just going based off of my own experience, and I think that it is I liked the Billy, the test that Jess does to see if Billy is telling the truth about it, the whole, oh yeah, you know how much I love soccer, and then her going, oh yeah, she was a huge fan of the Mexican national team, yeah, and I think that test was enough, but I'm not a huge fan of in an incredibly stressful moment, she becomes Sherlock Holmes level of perception, where it's I'm gonna be honest, here's the thing, she didn't know the reveal was coming, that she was friends with her parents, that the fake out, she didn't know that was coming. Granted, she had every reason to not believe it, but, my thing would be, come the fuck on. Wouldn't the easier thing to have been, oh, she used a picture that I've seen before? Wouldn't that be the easier thing to do? I feel like that's definitely the easier way to do that and get the same effect out, instead of being well, if you look at the shirt, it feels like they're going out of their way to make her a lot smart. I don't have a problem with her being very smart, but it's anytime they do something like that, and this isn't the first time they've done it it earlier in the show too, where it's she, oh, well, when I, the shirt was flipped because the shirt had buttons on the left side instead of the right, because men's shirts have buttons on the right side, because it's easier to button up with one hand if you're right-handed, and most people are right-handed, and it's okay, yes, that's something that you can point to, but I don't know, if someone showed me a picture, oh, I was friends with your dad, and it's here's a picture of me with them, I would be oh, there's a lot more things going through my mind besides let's look to see if the buttons are on the right side of the shirt, or if there's a sign of a Photoshop. I understand that the making her look smart, but I don't think that we really need that necessarily at every opportunity to do that, when you can just be yeah, I have that picture in my apartment. That's the picture they used. It's not, that's the way it could go. Or oh, I've seen that picture before when I was a kid. There are so many other options that would make it work just as well. I'm not entirely sure why they went with this one. And then especially for them to do the later in the episode, the soccer thing, I don't think we need that initial, oh, it's photoshopped part of it. It could just be, oh, she's lying. And I tested to see if she's lying, because it's such a common thing to do, where it's you feed them a false piece of information, to the point where it's the other person's is this a double-blind test, or it's are they testing me on this? That alone is easy to do. And it's if you think about it, it just makes the bad guys look incompetent, where it's come on, you go through all of these extraordinary steps to make sure everything is right, where it's okay, you know her clothing size, you know her shoe size, you know her, everything about her. Like, you've done all that research. You can't figure out with a Photoshop if you flip the image, if you mirrored the image. Like, come the fuck on. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, I don't know. And then for her to double-cross Billy the way she does, I was like, alright, well, at least we got this out of the way now. And now she's got to go to Mexico, which has states, and that's why, and to show her commitment, she's going to do that, and I like that aspect of it, but at the same time, I also don't think that it's necessarily the most important, I don't know, here's my thing. I'm surprised it took them this long to leave the country, considering very little of what they've covered and done has to do with North American tribes. Besides that, it's kind of like this weird, like, alternate history that it exists in, where all the tribes coexisted at the same time and were all in constant communication with each other. Basically, the tribes of North America and South America were essentially like what Europe was in the era, which is, number one, I'm not saying anything about, civilizations, but, like, just in terms of the timeline isn't accurate, because we went over this in past episodes. The Mayans did not coexist with the Inca and the Aztec. The Inca and the Aztec came much later. The Maya were in the same region almost as the Aztec, and the Mayans, were about 400 years prior, and they had petered out by the time we get to the Aztecs. And then it's like, what was the other part of it that I was like, that's really, like, weird? I forgot what it was. There we go. Well, like, I'm watching and I'm like, that's an odd choice. I don't know why they went with that. But yeah, strange. All around strange. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not against any of it. It's pretty interesting. At least they got through where they're getting to, and the story's moving into an interesting place as it moves toward the final phases. But we'll wrap up there for today. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.